It does feel like we're working at breakneck speed here as we get into the 4th episode of Muv-Luv Alternative. Not that it feels like the pacing's bad quite yet, it just feels like things are moving very, very quickly, and it's kind of getting hard to keep up. I also got quite confused this episode as the later parts really do start to go into stuff that I don't, again, not sure if I'm supposed to know what's happening or the significance of it, because as things kind of lay out, it doesn't quite make sense no matter how many times I went back over the content to really try to figure it out. But this is my thoughts on episode 4 of Muv-Luv Alternative, so let's jump into it. As we open up the episode, we have a nice little beach time with all the characters. We'll have like a 1-minute beach episode where all the characters get to have some fun following the fact that they just passed the exam and they're going to be able to move on to being able to pilot the mechas. And obviously, it seems like Shirogane is performing very well. As he does the tests, he passes the courses within a day. They're really shocked about this because the fastest person to pass the courses took them 5 days. So not too much of a shock there. But he tries to help the situation by allowing the rest of the members of his team to be able to look at his actual control logs to see if it will help improve them to where they can advance quicker. Additionally, the Fubukis, which are these robots they're supposed to pilot, are arriving quicker than expected, so that's really great as well. But not only do the Fubukis show up, also a Takemika Zichi, which is apparently a mecha that is only reserved exclusively for those of the Royal Guard, under direct control of the Shogun, which is obviously for Maya. And this is obviously a shock to a lot of people. And it being a UN base, there seems to be some people within the base that are upset that it's there. But additionally, one of the Royal Guards show up to kind of greet Maya, and as they all leave, they confront Shirogane and say, I'm not sure what you did with the UN database, but why am I speaking to a dead person? What did you do to get in here? And specifically to stay away from Maya. And so this starts bringing up the question of, well, who is Shirogane? Or at least, who is the Shirogane of this world? Is the Shirogane of this world dead? And now Shirogane is here from another world, and that's causing a bit of a conflict there. But yeah, like I said, having this other mecha there causes a little conflict in the mess hall. Some guys confront Maya, and Shirogane stands up and is like, look, why don't you put all this effort that you have to being angry about this and go fight the beta? These pilots are obviously misdirecting and infighting rather than dealing with the conflict itself, which makes perfect sense to me. But he gets a nice little punch in the face, and then later on has to talk to Morimo about the whole situation. She says that basically her teammates all came to her and fought for him to basically be excused from this entire conflict, which again is the whole aspect of, like, what did he really do? Honestly, what did he do? I guess he technically did infuriate the conflict itself rather than just leave it be. But this is a really cool scene because, my gosh, Jinjuchi just went up quite a bit on the waifu list. I don't know why, but this scene for specifically was pretty good. I really did like her in this scene. I guess it's the whole teacher aspect. Apparently she was his teacher in the previous world, but yeah, I don't know what about this scene. Maybe it was the music or something, but yeah, waifu level just shot up. But she did want to really push heavily to him this idea of trusting in his teammates, that obviously his teammates went through all this for him. Following this, Shirogane notes the fact that these new machines are a lot more responsive than the old ones, and he really does he has a feeling like there's something wrong with the system, like it needs some sort of system in play that will help it control better and be a lot more beginner friendly. As he notes this idea of him playing this old game in his previous world, Vulgar On, which is obviously Virtual On. It's Virtua On, not Vulgaron. Vulgarn. But anyways, he takes this information and goes back to Kozuki and says, hey, look, can we put in some things into play? We used to play this game in my previous world, and it was really easy to control. Essentially, he wants to incorporate into the controls a combo system and a cancel system, which are very gamey terms that basically mean the ability to hit one single button and do multiple attacks in sequence rather than having to do different maneuvers just to do one function or multiple functions. And additionally, when something is put into play that is functioning, such as an auto roll if you were to trip, where the system will automatically roll to, recoup itself and you can't control it, to have an ability to cancel it at some point so that you can do other inputs, which makes perfect sense to me. And it was really cool that Kozuki doesn't just accept this. She actually plays out like, look, it doesn't take into account all these different scenarios, that the beta aren't going to always come at you at one particular angle. And so she essentially needs to reprogram it to think like a human, which is kind of difficult. But even still, she has an idea to put it in play, and she wants him to be a test pilot for it to put it into effect. So all that stuff was really cool. Being a gamer, it kind of makes sense. It's gamifying a system to make it function easier, because obviously games have evolved for such a long time outside of war that functionality and usability has always been a focus to make it better and better improved. And also always a focus on beginners. Games are always focused on allowing beginners to come in rather than making it overly complicated, like in a military situation. Additionally to this, we got a lot of scenes with Kasumi. He obviously brings her one of these seashells as a gift from the beach, and she obviously has never seen the beach before. She really wants to see it. And following this, he also brings him a gift in return, which was this little picture book that she had, or this drawing book, where she drew a handheld. And this triggers a memory of him where I'm assuming it's supposed to be Sumika, but in his dreams, Sumika gives him a handheld as a birthday present because he really wanted one of these. And this picture that Kasumi had drawn is of this Game Gear. This Game Gear that you got. So it's obviously right here. As I mentioned previously, my assumption was that Kasumi was directly connected to Sumika. It was hinting at that very heavily. And now it seems like it's continuing to heavily suggest that there's at least some sort of connection between Sumika and Kasumi. Whether, Sumika is the brain inside the chamber, or that Sumika is somehow a reincarnation into Kasumi. Those are the two question marks there, but obviously there is some sort of connection here. And this is where things get confusing for me. I kind of get what the beats are in this particular scenario, but again, it's one of those aspects of I don't know if it's something they're going to talk about later that it's okay that I don't understand it now, or if it's something that's just not really well explained here, that those that read the visual or have read the visual novel can probably help me out here. Please, if you think that it's going to explain later on, don't say anything, and don't reveal too much. I'm very hesitant about how much help I ask for from the visual novel community, because while some help out extremely well, some don't know when to not say certain things. Like, I've already had pretty much Makoto spoiled for me, so thank you for that. I don't know why we have to explain too much. But anyways, it's appreciated. I know that people's heart's in the right place. But so they mentioned that the UN Undersecretary is coming to the base to inspect it. And this shocks Shirogane because this is very early. Apparently, this is not supposed to happen quite yet. They're supposed to do some training before he arrives. And why this is a shock to him is because he believes that on that same day, this HSST is supposed to drop. And it shows a shot of this spacecraft coming down to Earth. This upsets him. He immediately goes over to talk to Kozuki and tells her, look, he's not supposed to arrive yet. If he's arriving, that means this is happening. And then she's like, well, that doesn't matter. We'll see what happens. And he's like, no, it matters because within a month, Alternative 5 is going to start happening. And so something needs to be done. So she's like, okay, cool, I'll do something. And then they start talking about how apparently those that are on board with Alternative 5 are probably trying to push things forward. They're getting uneasy because things have not changed on the battlefield quite yet. So they may be wanting to do a suicidal attack on the original Hive, the first one. And then later on, he's looking at the map and he sees that Yokohama is marked as a beta hive, and he's like, wait, this is a beta hive too? And it's like, yeah, it's taken over, and there's still some things about the betas that are still in function here, so they still mark it. That part wasn't confusing. The part that was confusing is how, I guess he came to conclusion that this HSST is going to drop based on the fact this secretary is showing up. My assumption is that he knows somehow that the two things are linked, that the HSST dropping is part of the same program of the undersecretary coming to the base. Like, they were coming there to see if they were available to go for this attack because he knows that the HSST dropping at the same time was a part of one coordinated attack that will all come to one location. That's what I'm assuming this is implying, that he's panicking because he knows that the undersecretary coming there is going to lead to them having to go to here to fight alongside whatever this HSST is that's dropping. I'm assuming the HSST is some spacecraft they had in orbit that has a very powerful machine in it or something like that. I'm not quite sure what the HSST is supposed to be. But I guess the thing that really confuses me is that he was instilling in her that something needs to be fixed, like she needs to do something because it will mean that the base is going to get wiped out, or the base could get wiped out. I don't know, like, is the HSST going to wipe out the base, or is, That's one part that I don't quite understand. It's implying that this is showing up, and that's because this guy's coming here, and it could lead to the base being wiped out unless she stops it. But again, that's also one of the things that I guess puts way too much power into Kozuki, as if she can somehow stop them from doing Alternative 5, or at least this thing that will lead up to Alternative 5, by just stopping is she going to stop the HSST from dropping? Is she going to stop the undersecretary from coming there? And is the undersecretary not coming there going to make them go, okay, then don't drop the HSST? Again, I watched this scene like 5 times, and I don't quite understand, I guess, the process of thinking here, the process of which this is going. And I don't know if it's maybe, again, like something that's supposed to come up later or what. But either way, it was a good episode, besides that one part that confused the living crap out of me. Like I said, a very breakneck speed, getting into all this stuff. I guess a lot of the stuff around the mechas themselves is pretty cool. I guess redesigning, well, even as a person that has been in computers, that seems like a very lengthy process for them to be able to completely rewrite a system and not have to deal with bugs that could possibly be there, but it's still cool. Putting Jinjuji higher up on the waifu list is definitely a welcome, obviously. Getting a little more into the Royal Guard and Meia's involvement with that was interesting as well. And yeah, and just kind of connecting a lot more between Sumika and Kasumi, which I think is one of the more interesting elements with the stories, with the characters going forward. But overall, solid episode besides that final scene. Again, keep the spoilers in check. If it's going to be explained, don't worry about it. And just limit what you say. I don't really need everything spoiled for me, like the whole thing with Makoto. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of this episode and my impressions on it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. Support us on Patreon if you can. We definitely appreciate everybody that does. And also, there's a tip button inside the description if you want to support us directly. And y'all take care.